From handheld games to consoles, Nintendo has never failed to give us some great gaming consoles. However, while some of these consoles left lasting memories, some others were just bad. So, what are Nintendo's best and worst consoles? Stick around to find out. Nintendo should surely get its flowers for being ahead of the time. It was ambitious for them to take a stab at virtual reality in the 90s with the Nintendo Virtual Boy that was far ahead of its time. But how did it turn out? Well, the VR console had limited capabilities, which is excusable considering it was a first attempt. However, every other thing about the Virtual Boy was a disaster. First off, it came with few games that could pass as okay. And of these okay games, very few barely utilized the VR technology. Then the few games ambitious enough to explore the VR possibilities of this console were very painful to play. The cost of getting this console did not correspond with its little or no use. It was for the best that few people could afford it. I mean, it doesn't generate any nostalgia beyond being a relic of time. It would go down as a Nintendo relic that could burn a hole through your eyes and your pocket. Now, if Nintendo had not rolled out the Virtual Boy, the Wii U could have easily claimed the title as the worst console ever. Down to its name, the Wii U was like a half-hearted attempt to keep the game going after a successful Nintendo Wii. With the name Wii U, most people thought that it was an add-on for their existing Wii and not a whole separate console. Even the advertisements did not help with differentiating the Wiis from the Wii U. Along with its terrible branding, the most notable difference was the terribly designed Wii U gamepad controller. It had terrible battery life, a very short range meaning that the controller had to be 15 to 20 feet away from the console for it to work, and the screen that merely acted as a duplicated screen, not giving players any real advantage to the game they were playing. At the time, the Wii U also had stiff competition with Microsoft's Xbox One and Sony's PlayStation 4. While all three consoles were selling at a similar price, most people preferred the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. You can't really blame them, as those two consoles had lots of advantages that ultimately made the Wii U perform terribly in sales. Despite the Wii U's incredible exclusives, Nintendo ultimately failed with the Wii U. The Game Boy Color was one Nintendo device worth owning. When it was released, you either owned one or you probably wished you could convince your parents to buy one. The Game Boy Color offered a relatively small exclusive list, meaning that there was very little difference between the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy. In fact, many gamers ended up using the Game Boy Color to just slightly improve their Game Boy games. Although the Game Boy Color boasts of an impressive library of games, I think Nintendo missed an opportunity to create something that was a major upgrade. While the Game Boy Advance boasts of so many great games, one disadvantage of it is playing games in spaces that lacked good lighting. Although this was eventually corrected with the Game Boy Advance SP, it cost the Game Boy Advance a major opportunity. In the end, it would go down in history as one device that inspired some of the industry's best developers to really push the limits of handheld game design. The Nintendo Wii hit the market with a bang. The motion sensing controls were mind-blowing at the time and gave the Wii a seat in the future of video games. However, with each passing year, the Wii's shortcomings became apparent. As a result, the euphoria and the hype as the industry's next big thing cooled off a bit. Despite delivering some bad video games, the release of the Wii remains a turning point in Nintendo's history. The Wii delivered gaming to non-gamers and attracted them to delightful games such as Mario, Wii Sports, and Zelda. In the end, the motion sensing control is one legacy introduced in the Wii that has lived on through the Nintendo Switch's Joy-Con controllers. While Nintendo launched motion sensing controls with the Wii, they made touch control the norm with the Nintendo DS long before smartphones. They achieved this with their clamshell system, although it was weaker than the Sony PSP, its direct rival. However, this difference didn't really matter to gamers when they discovered the hack of using the stylus and resistive touchscreen. While gamers didn't really utilize this dual screen hack to its potential back then, the titles that leveraged it delivered a unique experience that stands till today. And with the DSi hardware refresh, a new generation of Nintendo fans got a taste of portable downloadable games. What the Nintendo 3DS lacked in hardware, it gave in software. The hardware was bad, and it took Nintendo several attempts to finally get it right. However, the 3DS boasts of one of the best game libraries in Nintendo's handheld history. The 3DS gave us some of the best Pokémon, Zelda, Metroid, and Animal Crossing games ever. The impressive library also had a strong lineup of third-party games to go with it. When Nintendo launched the GameCube, it was perhaps the last time it tried to go shoulder to shoulder with rivals like Sony in technical power. While the GameCube didn't gather enough dust in sales like Sony's market-conquering PlayStation 2, it sure gave us some great games. The GameCube's library houses one of the best collections of exclusive titles the industry has seen. GameCube gave us Resident Evil 4 and Animal Crossing. It also reimagined the Metroid franchise. The N64 takes us back to a time when Nintendo began to fall out with some of its third-party. However, it gave us some games that were part of the era, such as Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and GoldenEye 007. Despite some hiccups with the console's controller and a few missing features, the Nintendo 64 was a good console. The Switch Nintendo eventually made the dream of a fusion of handheld and console gaming a reality. One of the Switch's best features is its portability. However, beyond this, what really stands out is the dock, which gives you the capability of leaving it plugged into your TV without having the feeling of missing out on how you should be using the device. In the end, it's hard to imagine Nintendo would ever release another console that doesn't copy the Switch in design. The Nintendo Game Boy was really at the center of Nintendo's handheld gaming consoles. The ones released before it were woeful, and some that came after it were bad as well. However, the Game Boy was the golden boy of the handheld era. The secret to the Game Boy's success was how Nintendo changed the narrative of portable games being lesser console games. It offered interchangeable cartridges and a gameplay that looks like the Nintendo Entertainment System. It pushed aside technically superior rivals such as the Atari Lynx and Sega Game Gear to be the hottest piece of consumer tech at the time. If you owned the Nintendo Entertainment System, then you saw it fail at some time point. From broken loading trays to dusty cartridges, the NES is one of the least reliable Nintendo hardware. However, the NES library was quite impressive, and another great thing about it is the number of games still playable till today. In fact, some of them are seen as the gold standard in their genres. It's difficult to imagine being a young gamer of that era and not having a NES. Unlike other follow-ups that turned out the same or worse than their predecessors, Nintendo developed the Super Nintendo Entertainment System to prove that it was the future of gaming. The SNES stands as Nintendo's best gaming console ever because of the quality of games it offers, and a library of games that cannot be equaled or topped in terms of quality, innovations, and diversity.